Well, hello, Madcappers. How beautiful is this? This is just a gorgeous headband, and it's so comfortable on. Perfect for just about any occasion. You can wear it for work, or you could wear it out for a night on the town. It's just a lovely, lovely headband, but the best thing of all is that it's so easy to make. So stay with me today and let's make some of these gorgeous velvet headbands. I call them velvet, but it's actually, the fabric is called steamed velour. So I'm going to show you how to make the knotted band and a plain one because we'll have enough fabric. The steamed velour is a 58 to 60 inch wide fabric. So across the width, we can actually cut two. And it used to be readily available at the major fabric outlets, but now I have two very reliable sources in the US that will ship anywhere in North America. It's very moderately priced. It's a very quality material, really good value. I'm going to show you my technique to finish off the back seam because this is a densely knit fabric. There isn't a lot of shedding once you trim any of that extra fabric away, so we'll finish the back seam so it's nice and flat and comfortable, just like the back of this knot. The back of the knot is flat as well, so it just rests against your head without causing any irritation. And it's wide enough to cover your ears if you are in a cold climate like I am. So I'm going to be wearing mine as much as I can this winter. It's just gorgeous. What can I say? So with this fabric, the suppliers that I have will be in the description. One has already offered our viewers 10% off, so I'll put all those details in the description as well. And it's most likely that you will be able to find it even in the sale bins on the big outlets. Every once in a while, I'll see it back in our big outlet here in Canada. So just keep your eye open for it. It's called steamed velour, and the difference is it's a knitted fabric. It's not woven, so you will see this very fine knitted texture on the back, and that helps to hold all those little fibers in place even after you cut. Now I will have some fibers on my shirt because I've been working on these all day. Now you may see some stretch velvet in your search for this. It will have spandex or lycra added for extra stretch, so you may have to modify the measurements I'm going to give you now. Now I use this steamed velour to edge my beautiful velvet line of hats. I've been using it for over 25 years. It's just a reliable quality fabric that I love. So let's get started. Let's make ourselves some headbands, and I'll make the knotted one first, the plain one after, so you can decide whether you want to stick with me right to the end. So I'm going to trim off the rough edge of the cut that I made. I cut along the entire width, so I have 58 inches of fabric. I'm going to use 30 inches of that width or 76 centimeters of that width to make my knotted headband. And my depth, I'm suggesting that you cut between 8 and 8.5 inches. I'm going to go 8.5 inches, which would be 21 to 23 centimeters. I wouldn't go any deeper than that. However, of course, it's up to you if you want a deeper headband. It's just that you'll be making the knot bigger too. And I find this is just a lovely size. The proportions to me seem just right with going as much as 8.5 deep. Now, the first order of business is to just make a tube out of our headband. So right sides together, I'm clipping that long width of the headband that's going around my head. Those two raw edges are up together, and using with the wrong side facing me, I'm going to either close that up right across from one side to the other with a serge or a zigzag. Now I'm going to show you my industrial serger here. This little workhorse has been part of my life. I bought it secondhand, I think 25 years ago, and it's, as far as I can recall, it's never been out of service. It just keeps going and going, so knock on wood. And then I'll use my portable sewing machine to do the zigzag stitch. This is a nice little Janome HD 1000, a lovely little machine that I've had for about 5 years, and basically I use it to do any specialty stitches. It has 14 built in. So you either want to finish that long seam that goes around your head with a zigzag or with a serge. And now we're ready to turn this right side out. We have a beautiful tube, and there aren't a lot of steps to this headband production, folks. So we are getting close to being done. So I'll just roll out that seam as flat as possible. My seam on this headband will be either on the top or bottom edge. You could put it in the middle of the back of your headband if you'd like. You can put that seam whatever is easier for you and feels the best for your sewing equipment. And I'm using a pin just to hold the two layers together on each side. I want the raw edges of my tube to be matched on each side, and I'm also using pins that have a head so I can tell which is the side that I'm working on right now, because when I tie my knot, those pin heads are going to be turned around so they're facing down rather than facing up towards me. So that's just a little tip, folks, to make sure that you've got your knot done correctly. It's a pretty easy knot. Just overlap and slide one end in behind the other. Easy peasy, right? But we're just going to twist those ends so that our pin heads are down. And we've got a little bit of twist now that's inside the knot, and that's going to help us make these little ruffles and folds and the beautiful texture that this velvet produces. Well, the steam velour produces for us. And you can just pull on that knot to get the right look for you till you're happy with it. And I've just straightened out the ends too, the top and bottom edges of the headband right at the side of the knot. And it's just fun to play around with it. Each one is different too. I just love this fabric and I just love this headband. All right, look at that. That's beautiful. So I'm happy with that now. This knot is going to be the top side of the knot. The knot we're looking at now is the right side of my headband. So I'm just going to pull both ends up together, and we're going to do a back seam. Now I've placed my knot in the center of my headband, but you could choose to tie your knot a little off center if you want, or once you're finished sewing the back seam, you could sort of move the knot over so the seam is inside the knot. It's up to you. I kind of like this headband with the knot in the center. Now I've moved that one pin, so I've got now 4 layers secured, and my raw edges, those 4 layers are all in line together on the right side. And I'm going to use my magnetic seam guide just as a place to rest those raw edges against as I'm sewing, just to help keep them all in line. And I'm taking a little bit bigger than a 3/8 of an inch seam, not quite a 1/2 inch. And there you go. I've sewn through all of the layers of my headband. And I'm just going to do this extra step of trimming the corners off on a 45-degree angle on the outside of my back seam. And I'm being careful not to cut into my seam. I wouldn't want to do that. But I'm just getting rid of the bulk of the ends, the top and the bottom end of my back seam. And I think it's just going to make it more comfortable. And now I open up the seam, and I'm pushing the 2 raw edges of each side off to the side away from the seam, and I'm going to top stitch them down flat with a double top stitch up one side, pivot, go across the seam, and then back up the other side like a big rectangle. So I've gone down one side, and now with my needle in, I'm just going to sew across the seam, pivot again, and come back up the other side, catching all that raw salvage from my seam underneath my presser foot. And the raw edge is still to the right of my presser foot. And I'll come back across the seam again, and I'll just over sew rather than do a back stitch. I'll just go back down where I started, and everything should be held securely in place. All right, so now that final step is just to trim away as much of that raw edge that's still visible on the outside of my top stitching. And I'll trim as close as I can get to the top stitching. Careful not to cut through it. And of course, just getting rid of any extra threads too. I find this is just a really good way to finish this headband. There is a definite front and back to this headband with the knot. So by putting this work on the inside or the back of the headband at the back, I mean, you won't see it. It's going to be resting against your hair or your skin, not visible to the outside world. And it's so comfortable and flat. There's no bulk to it. There's no irritating. It's just a really nice way to finish it. And because this fabric is so tightly knit, you know, you can go over it with your lint brush just to get rid of any extra fibers that you might have cut with your scissor that are still sticking to the velvet. But once you've done that, you won't have any shedding. Oh, I have shedding on my sleeve, but that's because I've been working with this velvet all day. And again, it'll come off easily with a lint brush. I'm not worried. So look at that. Beautiful. And here I am trying it on. And of course, you could try it on before you do that top stitching stage, in case you need to make it smaller. And I've got my ears covered, lots of texture. Lots of things happening with this headband. It's just a beauty. I love it. So now I'll show you how to use up that little extra bit that might not be long enough to make a second knotted headband. And we'll make a plain headband. So remember, this fabric is about 58 inches to 60 inches wide. When I cut off the selvage edges, I didn't have two lengths of 30 inches. One was probably about 27 inches and the other 30. So I just trimmed the 27 inch down to 22 and a half, which is my head circumference. And I'm going to make myself a plain headband. And what's amazing too about this fabric being so wide is that you can make about 8 headbands from a yard or a meter, which is great. Really good for a sewing business. So I'm just doing that back seam. I put those 2 back seam edges together, right sides together, the shorter sides of my big rectangle there. And now I'm going to flatten my back seam by top stitching, and I'll work from the right side of the fabric, just checking to make sure that my seam is open underneath. And I'm going down one side of my seam. And then when I get to the bottom, I'm going to turn and come back on the other side of the seam, catching the raw edge of the wrong side of the seam that's on the wrong side underneath. And this is how it will look. And if you watch the channel and you've seen me make other headbands and hats, you know I like to do this. I like to flatten those back seams so that they are so comfortable against your head you don't feel any bulk of fabric underneath. And now we're going to finish it up using the burrito method. So I've got my headband open. The right sides are actually together, even though you can see the right side of the seam side of my headband facing upwards. And I'm just going to bring those 2 edges together, capturing the other parts of the headband inside. So all I'm seeing right now is the 2 edges of the long section of my headband that's going to go around my head. And I'll just use my zigzag stitch. I'll do a bit of a back stitch. I'm going to leave an opening so I can pull the right side of the headband through when I'm finished. But as I go along, I'm just going to pull out more of that headband that was captured inside and just keep sewing up the 2 raw edges together, right sides together, as I go around the entire width of the headband. And just pull it out, stop, pull it out, start again. I sped it up a little bit in case you've seen this before. I will put the link for the video that I explained this better. One of our early videos in the channel, headband made out of just a knit jersey knit fabric, and I use a burrito method and explain it in a little bit more detail. So I'll put that link in the description below as well. All right, now I've got my little opening there, and you'll see I've got a tube, a hollow tube inside actually. So the right sides are together inside of that tube, and on the outside, all I'm seeing is the wrong side. I've left an opening large enough to get my thumb in, and I will just start pulling out the headband. And once you've pulled it out, you'll have a really comfortable headband with no irritating seams, and you can decide to either close up that little opening that you're pulling your headband out of. You can hand sew it closed. You could machine sew it closed and put your company label there. You could decide whether that seam should be in the middle on the inside or at the top or bottom. And you can make little ridges by just giving it a bit of a pull. So here I am with my headband. The knotted one is lovely. The smooth one is lovely too. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much to our video producers, our patrons, our channel members for supporting the channel. We appreciate it so much. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We're Madcap Hats there too. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Come on and join the fun. And like this video while you're at it. I'm Tori Capes. I'm a certified milliner with 38 years in the hat making business. I appreciate you watching. Thanks so much. See you soon.